Welcome to Let Go of the Pen podcast. We're the Melindas from Hoosier Hills Recovery,
a ministry of Hope Baptist Church in Dillsboro, Indiana. Remember, it's all about letting go of that pen and letting God write your story.
Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about how addiction affects relationships and some statistics.
And some excuses and justifications we have heard addicts say. Things like, I am still a good person. I only do it while my children are at school or with someone else. They are so little they don't know the difference. It makes me function better. I can stop anytime I want to, and it only affects me. I'm only hurting myself.
I've heard that one because, as you know, my husband was an addict for a long time. And his parents, when we got married, they told us the story, and he hadn't even heard it. But when he would tell them that excuse all the time. Every time they would say something to him, he'd bring that up. And they actually had to take off work for a long time. They couldn't eat. They couldn't sleep. Their stomach was messed up all the time. They just were a wreck. And it does affect everybody else, not just you.
Yeah, the truth, TRUTH, is addiction affects relationships, which reminds me of core truth number 11. My choices affect me and also those around me.
I have a very interesting story that correlates with that.
Yeah?
Do you remember when we went to court with somebody? It was a couple of hours away. We had been there all day. It was a rough day.
Yeah,
and I was driving a little slap happy on the way home, a little tired. And we come up to a light, and I thought it was a wide turn light, and it wound up not to be. So I was making a narrow turn, very wide. And the people in the back were very nervous and scared. And they remember that still today. So when I made that choice to make the wide turn, it didn't just affect me.
Yeah, I had my seatbelt in the front.
Yeah.
And I was still affected, but not as much as the ones in the back. So we want to listen to some of these statistics. This would be a good time to bring in your kiddos, especially teens and preteens, to see if they know some of these statistics. And you know your kids best. You know, our Blake, he's only 10, and, we've brought him in on the conversation. And, with each of my children, I share a little bit differently. I choose carefully what I share with each of them. So I encourage you to bring your kids in if you think they're ready for this conversation.
Yeah. And listen to some of these, myth versus fact, and see if you realize.
Okay. Those in addiction are 18 and older. They are adults. What's the big deal?
The truth is that 2.2 million 12 to 17-year-olds have an addiction-related disorder.
Only illegal drugs cause addiction, right?
The number one abused substance is alcohol, with number 2 being nicotine, which is including the vapes that they're using. Number 3, marijuana. Number 4, opioids. There's 5 million people that have a prescription opioid use disorder.
And that is legally prescribed medication, not on the street synthetic. It's legally prescribed.
I know when we're looking at these statistics, I thought they'd look a lot different.
I definitely thought there would be different names up there. Another myth is marijuana does not lead to other drug abuse.
The truth is that 44.7% of lifetime cannabis or marijuana users eventually use other illicit drugs. With the earlier the use, the higher the risk.
Yes. If you think those statistics are mind-boggling, here are a few more wow statistics.
In 2025, more than 51.2% ages 12 and older have used illicit drugs at least once. That is scary. I have grandkids at that age.
About 134.7 million Americans, 12 and older, have consumed alcohol in the last month.
About 4,000 underage individuals die each year from excessive alcohol abuse, whether in a motor vehicle accident or from alcohol poisoning.
And that's a legally, that's a legal substance.
Not for underage.
Well, not for underage.
That one is talking about. Yeah, that's all right.
So 1 in 4 children under age 18 live with a parent or primary caregiver who has a substance use disorder.
And this one really affects me, and it's affected some of my family. But children living with substance-affected adults are more likely to experience emotional trauma and chronic stress, a higher risk of substance use initiation, academic and behavioral challenges, and an increased risk of neglect or maltreatment.
Opioids kill more than 217 Americans every day.
In Indiana alone, there was 1,618 overdose deaths, according to Indiana.gov for 2024.
And there is a dashboard you can look that up on. So
Yes.
I'm going to challenge you to look up the statistics for your state as well as your counties. And it shows not only overdose deaths, but also non-fatal overdoses.
Mm-hmm.
From the heart of a child, here are some questions they ask us. Why do people use drugs? What symptoms would you see if your friend was taking drugs? And what should you do if your friend offers you a drug? And that was scary that a child would ask me that.
Mm-hmm.
That they might be afraid that a friend was using, and he's in grade school. So
yeah. So Minda Sue, what did you say to him when he asked why do people use drugs?
I said sometimes they self-medicate. They use to forget the problem, but the problem with that is that it kind of makes it worse when it does come back. When you sober up, then you've got an even bigger mess.
They think they're going to get rid of their trauma or that they've
forget
had.
about it for a while. Peer pressure, and early exposure to drugs.
Yes. And we also talked about the symptoms to look for, like mood changes, a new friend group, their grades are declining. Yeah. We talked about that too, some symptoms to look for.
And other questions, which we sat some of the kids down and just kind of asked for feedback. What was too much information to tell them? What was not enough? We asked them what would they do if a friend was to offer them drugs. And all of them, their first response was, I would tell them no.
That was good.
Yes, that was good. They said they would take it and flush it, which we told them it wasn't a good idea to take it. Because if they're caught with it, then they're in trouble. And then the next was to tell a trusted adult, whether it was a teacher or even assistant principal.
Yeah, his principal or assistant. And what surprised me in that conversation, to add on a little bit, is all of the kids that we sat around the table and interviewed for questions, none of them would have told their parents, because they said their parents would have made a bigger deal out of it, which I can see me making a bigger deal out of it.
Yeah, I know one of mine said that they would tell Dad and not me because I would overreact. But then I was interested because the one that wouldn't tell their parent would tell their older sibling that,
they did at least feel comfortable for that.
And I mean, they were over 18, so, that was interesting that, they wouldn't reach their parents, but they would still reach out to an adult.
And, that reminds me of that core truth that you mentioned earlier. These statistics go to show that our choices do affect us and those people around us. And the ones that we love the most that it affects are children, our parents, our spouse, our siblings. It's really sad, but you really can't use that excuse because they do really affect
everybody.
Yeah.
So obviously, when we were talking to the kids, I told them what I would tell, what I would say, and I got their feedback of whether it was too much. I said, is it just say no? Is that enough? And one of my kids jokingly said that was enough, but the rest of them said no, that they would want more info than just say no. So I said, if you can love them from afar, but, if you're in class with them and they're next to you, it doesn't mean you can't talk to them. But you could always offer to go to an adult with them or ask them, is there a problem that you're facing that you need to talk about with someone? I'll go with you to talk. But, obviously don't be alone with them. Don't go to their friend groups. So love them from afar. I know these statistics are overwhelming, and We want to discuss how you can help a loved one, or maybe if it's you and you seem defeated, you're searching for pleasure anywhere you can find it, whether it's drugs, alcohol, food, other things. Addiction is causing us to run anywhere but to God.
We were having a hard time figuring out how to close this podcast, and I was looking for verses in the Bible of why alcohol or drugs would be wrong. But while praying, God led me in a different direction, because it's in a relationship with God where everything we are searching for we'll find, whether it's peace, security, comfort, love, joy, protection. Yes. Psalm 16:11 says, "Thou wilt show me the path of life. In thy presence is fullness of joy. At thy right hand there are pleasures forevermore." And I really love that verse. You know, God doesn't come down and judge us so harshly. I know we saw a video in our recovery meeting last night where a man was just, he was in a bad shape and always doing things that are wrong and drugs. And a guy from church would come up, and instead of judging that guy and saying, "You don't amount to nothing, you're no good, quit using drugs, don't you know any better?" He would say, "I love you, man. God's got a plan for you. Don't give up." And this verse just shows me how loving. You know, sometimes people are beat down enough, they don't need to know how horrible they've done or what they've done is wrong. They know that.
Yeah.
But if you could just use some encouraging words and let the rebuke come maybe from the pulpit or something and not direct, but just encourage them and remind them that God's not done with them yet. God loves them. I love you.
Yes. And it's a good reminder of that Greg always says during the meeting. He says, if you work on that vertical relationship, everything else balances out. And we have seen that many times in our work with the jail ministry. You know, we've prayed about situations. We've kind of given up on a couple of the situations. And then later we went to jail, you know, like months later, and the lady says, "Hey, I got something to tell you today. I had given up. I'd given it to God. Forgot about it." And she goes, "I got a call from somebody, and they have my mom's stuff. It's not lost." And, you know, we had given up on being able to get those things for her. So it was an amazing reminder to see it come full circle.
And what's that saying that you always remind me of, as well as other people?
As long as you have a heartbeat, God still has a purpose for you.
Absolutely.
So remember, let go of that pen and let God write your story.
And please give us a like and follow.
And reach out at letgoofthepen@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to share with your loved ones.
Absolutely. Bye.
Yeah.